Hello everyone, I am Preet and in this video we'll continue our search in finding the real villain of the Mahabharata. In last video we discussed Duryodhan, Shakuni, Dushashan and Dhritarashtra. If you haven't watched that video yet, then watch it first and then come back here. Its link is in the card on the top of the screen as well as in the description below. So let's begin. Karna. Now Karna is another interesting case. He also followed Duryodhan blindly and allowed him all of his deceitful activities and even participated in some of them, like the Lakshagra incident as well as the gambling match. He even called Draupadi a whore in open court and further said that a woman who already had five husbands shouldn't have any problem with a sixth one and that she should sit on Duryodhan's lap. He also broke the rules of war and killed Abhimanyu along with many warriors who all attacked that one single child. Not to forget that his entire knowledge was built on a lie. He lied to his guru Parshuram about his caste, and when Parshuram did find out, he cursed him that he would forget that knowledge when he would need it the most, which he did during his decisive battle with Arjun, which led to his death. So there are a lot of questionable decisions here, but similar to Dhritarashtra, there's a tragic twist. Karna was a royal Kshatriya warrior who was abandoned by his mother at birth and was thus raised as a Sooth, a charioteer's son. He wanted to be an archer, but he was denied that opportunity by everyone because of his caste. He then owed Duryodhan when he made him the king of Ang, and so he had to promise to be on his side till he died. It was his lower caste and the ridicule that came along with it that made him take all those questionable decisions. He was an honorable man who tried to follow Dharma, but his desperation to become a Kshatriya came in his way. He always abided by his promises and donated his wealth to the needy as well. He even gave away his entire divine golden armor and earring set which he had from his birth to a disguised Indra, even though he knew that was a trick. Karna was vengeful, petty, and ignorant, but also desperate, honorable, and selfless. Bhishma. Bhishma is another very fascinating case. He was the great patriarch of the Kuru family. He was the grand banyan tree under whose shade the entire Kuru dynasty lied. He was arguably the most influential and most powerful of any Kuru. He was also a great follower of Dharma, abider of oaths, and keeper of promises. Yet, so many horrible things happened in Hastinapur under his watch. The power struggle arguably became worse and worse while Bhishma was the protector of the throne. He gave his personal oath of serving the king of Hastinapur so much importance that he also turned a blind eye to the deceits and unfairness that were happening under him. He stayed silent during the gambling match and even while Draupadi was being disrobed by Dusashan. His allegiance to the throne made him do many unfair things himself also. He forcefully kidnapped the three daughters of the king of Kashi, Amba, Ambika and Ambalika, and brought them to Hastinapur to marry them to his stepbrother Vichitravirya. Then, on the basis of his might and power, he cornered the king of Gandhar into marrying his daughter Gandhari to the blind prince Dhritarashtra. He was strong, yet he allowed Adharam to prosper in Hastinapur. But he was following his oath also, an oath where he renounced his right to the throne as well as his right to marriage and have children so that his father could marry a fisherwoman and be happy. A truly noble oath, arguably even too noble. He followed that oath and followed his dharma until the day he finally decided to die. He was also guilt ridden with his ability to break his oath and do dharma and even told the Pandavas the way to kill him in the war. So, yeah, Bhishma was too rigid and even selfish regarding his oath, but he was also completely selfless in other ways. He was loving and he was self aware as well. Yudhisthir. Now, Yudhisthir is arguably one of the heroes of the Mahabharata. So, why he is on the consideration of the spot of the villain? Well, let's discuss. The gambling match was unfair, but Yudhishthir willingly participated in that match. He willingly bet all his wealth and his kingdom of Indraprasth. He willingly bet his four brothers, himself, and even their wife Draupadi. He then also lied to Guru Drona during the Kurukshetra war about his son Ashwatthama dying, which made Drona put away his weapons and thus he was killed. He then used to stop his brothers many times when they tried to stop adharma and unfairness also. Why? Well, he did that because he was a strict and sincere follower of Dharma and never spoke lies. He was a selfless and dharmic king who always thought about his people and never about himself. He expanded that ideology as much as he could to his brothers also, and so he never allowed them to do anything which wasn't according to the rules and dharma itself. He just spoke one lie in his entire life. So, yeah, Yudhishthir was addicted to gambling, he was too idealistic and rigid in his views, but he was also extremely sincere, dharmic, and selfless. Krishna. At last, Krishna. Krishna is also slowly becoming an easy candidate for being the villain of the Mahabharata. He was the puppeteer of this great show, and so the blame is that he is God and so could have stopped all the death and carnage from happening, yet he purposefully didn't and allowed everyone to kill each other. He also used deceitful and treacherous tactics a lot of times to get back at Duryodhana and Shakuni. So just because he is God, he is beyond karma and consequences and do whatever he wants? Well, not exactly. Nobody is beyond karma, not even Krishna. For all things that he did, he was cursed at the end of the war by Gandhari. And regarding what he did, he clearly said that what Duryodhana and Shakuni were doing was adharm, and what he was doing was also adharm. But the difference was in the intention and purpose. Krishna was doing it for the intention of establishing dharma, while Duryodhana and Shakuni were doing it for the intention of establishing adharma. Krishna never said that what he was doing was dharma. He knew it was adharma, but he did it to achieve dharma. A very complex and nuanced idea indeed, which is quite relevant in today's time also. I'll make a video about Krishna's ideology soon in the future, so be on the lookout for that. So we have discussed all the potential 8 candidates for being the villain. First of all, you guys tell me what are your thoughts. Who do you think the real villain of the Mahabharata is? Comment in the comment section below where I reply to almost all comments. Okay, so it is pretty clear that the answer is complicated. All characters are grey and have motivations and tragedies in their life which could justify their behaviors. Now there are of course shades of grey. Yudhishthir, who just spoke one life in his entire life, cannot be equally as fault as Shakuni or Duryodhan, who lied and deceived on a regular basis. Duryodhan and Shakuni are way worse than Yudhishthir, even with all of Yudhishthir's fault. Duryodhan, Shakuni, Dushasan and Dhritarashtra are easily on the blacker side of grey, while Karna, Bhishma and Yudhishthir seem to be on the whiter side. And Krishna is confusing. We don't know where to categorize him. Also, others are mortals while Krishna is God. So it doesn't fit in this grey area also. Categorizing heroes and villains in a story shouldn't be so impossible, right? Well, that is because there is no concept of hero and villain in Indian mythology. There are no heroes or villains in any story of Indian origin. Now you might say that yeah, there aren't black and white heroes and villains, but what about anti-heroes or tragic heroes or even villain protagonists? They aren't black and white. But the thing to note here is that all of these terms come under the heroes and villains paradigm which come from ancient Greece. Hero, or more technically called protagonist, and villain, or more technically called antagonist, were first created by stage poets in about 500 BCE in ancient Greece. Now, this is a very specific structure of storytelling which is very different from the storytelling structure in Indian texts. Indian storytelling is based on the paradigm of God and characters. In this paradigm, there must be the concept of rebirth and karma. So, for example, in the Mahabharata, the Pandavas, Kauravas, Bhishma, Drona, Vidur, etc. are characters, and Krishna is God who is the master puppeteer of the entire show, but everyone is bound by karma and rebirth, even Krishna. In the Ramayana, Ram is the central glue around which all other characters come and go and change for better or worse, but he is also bounded by karma and rebirth. In literary terms, we can even say that karma and rebirth are the true gods of Indian stories. Without these concepts, the story can't be called Indian or Hindu as per its traditional meaning. Fascinating stuff, right? So, yeah, the final answer of our question is that there are no villains only in Mahabharata. Now, this title might seem clickbaity to you now, but it's actually pretty perfect if you think about it. The title is the wrong info you might have had about the subject, and so clicking it ultimately made you realize that incorrect info and made you actually gain more knowledge from that topic. Kind of feels like clickbait justification, but well, never mind. Once again, you guys tell me what are your thoughts. Comment all your thoughts in the comment section below where we can have lots of productive discussions. Also, like the video and share it to everyone you know if you like my content. You can watch these other videos of mine also, and don't forget to subscribe to Relevant Myths and hit the bell icon so that you never miss my videos. Thank you for watching and have an awesome day.